Hey guys, Sarah here from Work Life Glue. If you are new to my channel, I love to share how we create balance that sticks as a two-parent working family. I work in the home as an online entrepreneur, but I also have been a teacher, a nanny, a daycare provider, and now I run this channel and a lot of other things online. My husband is a busy chef, and if you're just clicking on this video, hi, this isn't my normal content, but it's something that a lot of people have been asking me about, why we are deciding to homeschool next year, why not this year, what are our decisions, we thought it was going really well, and there is a lot to cover in this video, and I thought I'm just gonna share. I know I'm a little nervous about sharing, but I just think this can give encouragement to those who are kind of on the fence or maybe don't even really know why people homeschool, or just to give encouragement to those who maybe are wanting to homeschool but are kind of nervous about it, as well as to just give understanding to those who don't really understand why people would homeschool, and just share there's many reasons why a family might homeschool. Ours are unique to us, but I'm sure there are many in here that apply to most homeschooling families. And before I jump into why we aren't schooling in the traditional sense anymore starting next school year, I also want to say this decision had absolutely nothing to do with the amazing teachers our oldest daughter has had at preschool, at kindergarten. Our school system is amazing. We love the teachers, we loved the kids. It has nothing to do with that really. There are lots and lots of reasons that I'm going to get into here that really have nothing to do with any one person or anything. We've absolutely had zero negative experiences in public school, so it had nothing to do with that. But let's jump in. So reason number one is very specific to our family, but if you have somebody in your family who works a weird schedule, this may apply to you as well. So my husband is a chef at a hotel. He's the head chef. He has a very random schedule, albeit this year has been more regular than normal, but I know that's not going to be the way it will always be. He usually worked a lot of nights and weekends, and so our oldest daughter, and any of our girls once they're in school won't see him a whole lot, and that really has bothered me and him for a very long time. But we didn't think homeschooling was really an option to us back then, but now it is, and it just will allow us to have our weekends whenever he is off. He can be part of their schooling experience. We can go on adventures together, and we won't have to sacrifice his time home with not being able to see his kids. So that is a huge deciding factor for our specific family. Reason number two that we are deciding to homeschool is to cater to the learning of our individual children. Now, we don't really know what our two younger daughters will be like as they move on up into school age, but our oldest daughter, she's very bright. She's always had a knack for learning letters and reading and things like that. And so in kindergarten, she could be learning to read at a much faster pace than she is, but because the other kids aren't all there yet, she kind of has to slow down. That's not to knock schools at all. That's how it has to be. It makes sense. And she can also learn in that environment to teach others, but she can also learn that at home. So for us, we are able to move our kids ahead in things that they've already mastered, but also if they have things that they are struggling with, we can really focus on them, and we don't have to bring the other kids down. They can focus more on what they're really good at. But we can kind of go at their own pace and cater the learning to the child, which to me is a huge benefit of homeschooling. We also don't have to give our kids busy work to do while they're waiting for the others to catch up. They can move ahead because I can cater each of their learning to the individual child. And I know for me, this was in high school, but I had an experience with a teacher who made the whole class redo a test and explain how they got the answers because most of the class had failed the test. I remember I got half a point off on the entire test because I forgot like a negative sign. And so I was talking to the teacher saying, why do I have to redo the test? I've clearly shown that I've understood this. Can you give me something else to do instead to further my learning? And he got really defensive and upset with me. He was a new teacher, and I see now that I probably didn't go about it the right way, but that happens a lot in school where kids who have already mastered what they've learned have to just kind of do busy work, or they have to help others when they could be moving ahead. And so I like that with homeschooling. I can move my child ahead. They don't have to redo things that they've already clearly shown that they've known. and they don't have to just spend a lot of time on one thing when they've clearly mastered it. Reason number 3 is a huge one for us. We are excited to be able to dive deeper into topics that really matter to our family, like our faith. We are Christian. That's not to say if you are public schooling or, you know, in a religious school that this isn't happening, and obviously if you are in a public school, faith is not in your school, but you can supplement in other ways with church, devotions at home and things like that. But what I really love about homeschooling is that we can incorporate our faith into our studies. We can read religious literature, we can learn about religious art, we can learn about religious poetry, look at religion when it ties into science and geography and what does the Bible say. And I just really love that we can interweave it, because for us, faith interweaves into everything, and I don't want it to be this like separate thing we do on Sundays or we do before bed. I want it to be intertwined to everything. How does God fit into all of that? And that's a huge deal for us, and we're really excited to be able to do that, to really give our kids a well-rounded school experience with faith interwoven into it. But we can also spend more time on things like art, exploring nature, and different things that they're really excited about, and crafts, and just so many things that in school are more like specialized and they don't do every day. We can incorporate it as much as we want and really give them that well-rounded education. Reason number 4 is to really focus on the whole person and life skills. I know, you know, having had my daughter in preschool and then in kindergarten, even though this year has looked a lot different than it normally would, I know that nights are just really busy. We have Girl Scouts, we have dance, and just like doing bed and bath and, you know, dinner and all of that stuff takes up a lot of the night, and we're usually just like boom, 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 trying to get it done. Our kids are antsy and they're not in their best state at night as they would be in the morning, and so it's really hard to incorporate things like chores and getting them involved in cooking, because quite honestly our patience is really thin at that point and we're just trying to get through the night. I really love that we can incorporate chores and taking care of our mind, body, soul, and our home environment on a slower pace. We can do it in the morning, so they're really learning those life skills, and we can focus on those things that sometimes get lost in schooling. We can focus on financial literacy and what that looks like as they get older. We can focus on all these different things that they are going to need for life that don't always get taught in school, but we also feel like we don't have a lot of time at home when they are in school because we're trying to bond with them or we're trying to get things done. So I really love that we can take our time and really incorporate those into our day. Reason number 5 starts with one of my hesitations about homeschooling, which we had a lot of, and I'm sure most people do when it comes to homeschooling. A big one is they will have a lack of socialization. This is like the number one thing people cite as being a reason not to homeschool. But when I'm looking at homeschooling, I'm now reframing that for a reason to homeschool. It's not a lack of socialization. It's actually we will be building a community around our whole family. School provides a community mainly for the child. Sometimes the parents get involved, but it's not a community like that that surrounds your whole family all the time. Some people can get really involved, but it's not as easy to do when they're at school and you're kind of separated from that. With homeschooling, we can choose to create a community around our whole family, which I'm so excited about. We actually joined a community already that we will be doing once a week, where we will be meeting, our kids will be learning, playing with other kids. I will be meeting other parents, and this community does field trips, they do outreach, they will serve you if you have gone through a big life event, and it just becomes this great community that you're growing your kids up with. And I just love the idea of that, of having a whole community. There's the quote, "It takes a village to raise a child," and I love that we are going to be able to create that village. Also church, we can be more involved and have that community surrounding us. We can go see friends and family a lot more throughout the day and throughout the week and create that community around us. So they will be getting tons of socialization, but in a way that really benefits the whole child and the whole family unit, which I'm just so excited about, creating friendships with kids that have siblings that are the same ages as our kids or that get along really well, and so we can spend time with them. And so they are going to be getting tons of enriching social experiences, but just in a different way that really helps our whole family, which I'm excited about. Plus we will be involved in dance, Girl Scouts. We've planned to do, our church does Awana, which we will probably do, music lessons and things like that. So we will be getting lots of socialization. That's definitely not something we will be lacking in. Another big hesitation I had is that, quite honestly, my kids drive me crazy a lot of the time. They fight a lot, they bicker, and it feels like maybe this wouldn't be a good fit because they don't get along very well. I had to reframe this as well because, quite honestly, this was one of the biggest reasons why I was hesitant about homeschooling. It sure would be easier on me to send my children to school. Not to knock school, not to knock parents that do that. I get it, and a lot of parents work and they have to do that. I totally get it. They work outside the home, the child has to go to school. I get it. This is not a slam at that at all. But I had to really reframe this in my mind because if I want my kids to get along, we have to work at it. And the only way to be able to really work at it is to spend more time together. So by having a homeschool, we can really focus on our relationships, on our family. Plus, what I've really noticed with my kindergartner is when she goes to school, when she gets home, she's exhausted. She has been regulating all day, so she is not in a state where she can regulate, so she's much easier to get upset. She needs space, but she wants to be around the family, so that's really hard for her to follow the rules, to be kind and courteous because she's been so kind and courteous at school. She's kind of, her bucket is empty by the time she gets to school. Plus, I've noticed her really needing one-on-one attention and acting out to get that attention, and I, having other kids and being at the end of my rope and trying to do all the things at night, I don't have a lot of patience or time or energy to give her that one-on-one attention. With homeschooling, I will be able to build that one-on-one time into our day to give all three of my girls one-on-one time every single day. They won't have to be fighting for it so much, and we can do lots of family adventures and things like that where conflict isn't really a part of it. Like when we go to the park or we go to museums or we go on a walk, they don't fight in those environments because it's so enriching. And so by incorporating more of those, we can bond together. We're not fighting as much, and I can work more on the skills and filling up my kids' cups so that we're avoiding those and we're creating bonds rather than separating, if that makes sense. I really had to reframe this in my mind, but looking at it now, it just makes sense that homeschooling would actually help foster those relationships. Yes, there will be fighting, of course, they're siblings, but we can really work on it, and I can work on my own mindset, and it kind of forces me to have to deal with it. Whereas when I can just tell my daughter to go to school, we're not really fixing the problem, but it does make it easier. And so it feels like it's not as big of a problem, if that makes sense. But with homeschooling, I'll have to deal with it, and we'll have to create ways to mitigate that, to work on conflict resolution, and just to create that family bond. Reason number 7 is huge for us. We are really big on creating an enriching and free, wholesome childhood for our kids. Now, I loved school, so I feel like I still had that growing up, and I also lived on a farm and was the only child at home, and so I got to explore and do all these things. But we live in a different world than we lived 25 years ago, and so I feel like kids are being pressured to grow up too fast. The standards are getting pushed down on our kids even more every single year to be able to read sooner, to be able to do math sooner, to kick out Phi-Ed, to kick out music and art, and those are so important to us. Plus, I think free play is so important, and we're just devaluing that as a society. We know it's important, but it feels like it doesn't really have a place in school. And so by homeschooling, first of all, it takes a lot less time every day to homeschool because you don't have those distractions. You don't have to spend time going to the bathroom and having 20 kids go to the bathroom and wash their hands, and have 20 kids go get their lunch and bring it back, and have 20 kids get refocused. So you take a lot less time to learn the same things in homeschooling than you would in a traditional setting. It's just the nature of it. And so our kids will have more time to go outside, to explore, to just slow down. And that is a huge factor for us, to just be able to slow down, linger, to enjoy childhood as it's meant to be enjoyed, and to just really bask in the wonder of childhood and just go at a much slower pace that allows them to dive deep into play, dive deep into the wonder around them, and learn through their experiences. Number 8, this is the one I'm kind of nervous to talk about because we all have our different views. We all have different feelings about how things are displayed and presented to children, and when they are presented, how they are presented. And there are a lot of topics out there that our kids will have to face at some point. Sex, government, sexuality, gender, politics, race. All of these things are really hot topics right now and are important to talk about, are important that our kids learn about, for sure. So I don't ever want to say like I don't want our kids exposed to any of that. And that's not true at all. But we feel very strongly about our kids preserving their innocence as long as possible, because once your kid loses parts of their innocence, you cannot get them back. And I think kids at certain ages just don't understand things, or can't understand things in the way that maybe other kids can. And so we really want to be in control of as much as possible. Obviously, they're still getting that socialization, so things could come up. But we really want to be ahead of what they are taught about. We want to be in control of when they learn about sex, how they learn about it, what ages they learn about it, which is specific for each child, because each child is different, and how we approach those topics. We want to be the ones presenting those topics. Now, I have friends, and I totally respect them, who say, you know, we'll have those topics, they'll come home and they'll tell us about those topics that came up at school. Maybe another child was talking about it, or it got brought up with current events or something like that, and we'll talk to our kids then. And I totally support that, but I also know, having been a kid, I didn't tell my parents everything. And so maybe my child will hear about sex for the first time at school, or about, you know, a racial topic, or being a lesbian or something like that, at which they do need to learn about, but they might not come and tell me, and they may not understand it, and they may just form an opinion when they're not really ready to form an opinion, or they may not know the whole picture. So we want to be in charge of presenting those topics to our children in an appropriate way for their age, at the right time, when they feel ready, when they're starting to get curious about that stuff. And we just feel, as parents, this is our main responsibility. We understand why sex and things like that are taught in schools, because they have to be for the kids that may not be getting that at home. But our kids will be taught everything they need to be taught, and we just really want to be ahead of those topics and start it slow and open the dialogue for conversation that they may be kind of shy to bring up at school, and maybe the teacher doesn't have the same stance as we do, or maybe won't explain it in a way that makes sense for our child. We will be able to take our time to do that at home. I hope that makes sense. This is a hard topic because people feel very strongly about it, but it is something that we feel strongly about, that we want to be in charge of. And so I did want to bring it up in this video. This is not to say we want our kids to live in a bubble. These are all topics that they will have to face, that we will have to introduce, that they will have to learn about, but we really want to do it at the right time in the right way that fits our family. Reason number 9, and I think this is really what was kind of the catalyst for really starting to think about homeschooling, because I was putting it off. Maybe we'll homeschool in a couple years. It's a lot of work. Like, maybe we don't want to do it yet. But this year for our kindergartner, while amazing in a lot of ways, has also been really, really hard. Our district was open most of the year. We did have to do distance learning for 2 months over like Thanksgiving and Christmas, which was a huge disruption for our child and came very abruptly. Plus, she's had to quarantine 3 different times so far, and it's only March. So that's a lot when you think of how much time she was actually in school. She had to quarantine 3 times for being a close contact. Plus, she's had 2 colds and had to miss school, go get tested, worry about maybe not being able to go back, and thinking about all the stuff she would miss. She had to miss her birthday. She had to miss Valentine's Day. It was just... it's been a lot of disruptions that, especially for a really little child, is a lot. She understands that this is a weird thing, that the virus is there, but it's just been really, really hard on her. I've seen just the disappointment and the change in her demeanor when she gets sick or she has to quarantine. It's been really, really hard for her to have to go back and forth and back and forth, and I really don't have any evidence to believe that it will be any different next fall. So that's been a huge reason why we're deciding to do it next year. I wanted to give this year a try. I had a brand new newborn, a week old, when school started, and I just didn't feel ready to take on homeschooling. But now, seeing how school has been, we have decided that this year, this upcoming school year, will be the best time to start, so we just don't have to deal with that stuff. We won't be as exposed to other people. So it's less likely to have to quarantine, and if we do, school will just keep on going as usual. We don't have to do a bunch of worksheets and things like that or online stuff. I just think for us, it makes the most sense to start next year because we want our kids to just have as much of a uninterrupted schedule and uninterrupted childhood as possible, where we're not having to just change what they're doing and uproot them in a moment, which happened a lot this year. And then our very last reason that I could come up with for this video is just to foster a love of learning, to foster self-reliance in our kids, independence and freedom when it comes to learning. We want our kids to love learning, and I loved learning. I was the kind of kid who was just meant to go to school, tick off all the boxes. I love to learn, but I know that's not every child, and that likely will not be all three of my children. They're all different people. And so sometimes in the school environment, kids kind of get, you know, knocked down if they don't like learning in a desk, especially as they get older and they're more hands-on or they're more auditory or they're more kinesthetic. It can be really hard for them in some settings with some teachers, you know, just depending on, and we have no control over who their teacher will be or what their classroom setup will be. So I just really like knowing that we can really help foster that love of learning at home and really set them up for life and to be able to learn things on their own through life and not be dependent on a textbook or things like that. They can learn how to learn and really take that on more and more as they get older, of being self-reliant when it comes to their education. Those are our reasons for homeschooling. I would love to know if you homeschool, what your experience has been, or if this opened your eyes in some way. Head over to our community tab and find the thumbnail for this video, and you can comment there since YouTube has disabled our comments. I would love to keep this conversation going and share more about our curriculum choices, day in the life, things like that if you guys are interested. So give this video a thumbs up if you do like this content. This is definitely not going to become a homeschooling channel, but I thought I could integrate it if you guys are interested. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.